Welcome to the show. We hope you have a blast. Thanks for making time for the Dealer Talk podcast. Another business leader, here's a penny for your thoughts. This ain't a regular conversation, baby. This that Dealer Talk. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dealer Talk podcast. I'm your host, Charity. Herb is not with us today because we are going to do a special episode, Women in Automotive, and I kicked him out. So we are going to quickly introduce each one of our guests. We have another Charity on here too, so that'll be fun. We'll have to come up with a way to announce each other. But why don't you, Charity, why don't you start?
Sure. My name is Charity Dunning. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Fixed Ops Marketing.
And Kaylee?
So I'm Kaylee Felio. People know me as the Parts Girl. I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager at Parts Edge.
And it's Elena or Elena?
Elena, yes, you got it. Elena Ciccotelli, Vice President of the Automotive Practice at Teleperformance and the host of the EVs for Everyone podcast. Can we shout out our own podcast? Is that allowed?
You sure can. Absolutely.
There we go.
Does everybody have a podcast?
I think we all do.
Yeah.
Mine's the Parts Girl
Podcasting, it's a
podcast.
thing. Yeah.
What the Fixed Ops?
What the fixed up?
WTF.
Yeah. I love it. How long have you guys been podcasting for?
I'll go first. So I started my EVs for Everyone podcast just last year, but I've been podcasting since 2019. So another podcast was called the Side Geek Central podcast. That's where I kind of got my feet wet and really fell in love with podcasting and just meeting new people that way. So there we go.
That's fun. Kaylee? I know this answer.
Since last year, early last year.
And Charity?
I think we started January 2021. I think that's when we started.
Fun. And do you guys have co-hosts?
I do. I am the managing partner of Fixed Ops Marketing. Russell B. Hill is my host. So I'm the co-host.
Yeah. Well, I just had this discussion with Herb like last week. I'm like, so if I'm talking to somebody, are you my co-host? And he said, yes, I'm allowed to say he's my co-host.
Yeah.
Because we were on season 8 and he did the first. I hopped on as a co-host in season 7. I was doing all the social media in season 6, and then I hopped on in season 7 as
Yeah, we went through that too. We're like, are we both co-hosts, or are you the host, I'm the co-host, or how does this? Can I just be the executive producer?
Right. Do I have to do the social media? Can we pay somebody to do this? So, what would you say? What do you think that the thing that you've learned the most from? Okay, I'm going to make this a 2-part question. Why did you start podcasting, and what have you learned the most from podcasting? Kaylee, go first.
I started. Why did I start it? I was going on a lot of other podcasts, and I realized that it would be really fun to be the person asking the questions and getting to know people in the industry. And there wasn't a whole lot of focus on parts. There's a lot of fixed ops. There's not a lot of focus on parts. So that's really why I wanted to start it. I don't feel like I talk that much about parts though, because my guests that come on, we just talk about whatever we want to talk about. But I forgot the last part of the question. Why I started it?
Why and what have you learned?
Oh, what have I learned? I learned that I can't do it all. So I quickly learned right off the bat that editing and being the producer is just not feasible for my role, because I'm also a salesperson and marketing. So it just didn't make sense for me to try to do it all. It was just taking too much of my time. So I learned really quickly to get organized and not do everything. Mm-hmm. Delegate.
the get organized part's so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like
It is.
and when you add a podcast on top of a career, it's like I just feel as if my brain, a lot of times my brain feels like a Tetris board, and adding all of those layers feels like those upper levels of the Tetris game when they're like coming at you so fast that that's what my brain feels like.
Yeah. I think I learned that just like dedicating a day during the week just to focus on podcast stuff really helps with like my brain not being all over the place. Obviously, throughout the week, you're going to think of ideas and you just write them down. But I like dedicate one day where I focus on the podcast. And I actually learned that from Charity Dunning, the other Charity.
I was like, I don't remember saying that. So that's what you do, Charity, is one day?
I do. I don't remember saying that, but I do
one day a week.
Yeah, I suppose, you know, some weeks it's just nothing but the podcast. There's just so much that has to be done, and I wish I could just delegate one day, but I need more time than that. But you know, some weeks we're just loaded back to back with guests. We're scheduling them out, you know, into the future. And then other weeks I don't have anything and everything is done. So I kind of get to sit back and relax. So yeah, it really is dependent on what we have going on at the moment. Mm-hmm. But to answer your question, Charity, that sounds so rude to say, but
I know.
We started, basically we wanted to open up our network to more people. We wanted to meet more people. We wanted to learn about people and see what they were doing in the industry. And that's what we strove to do. And that's what we've learned. You know, we've learned all kinds of things from all kinds of different guests. It's been a great experience.
That's fun. And you have a baby in the background, just so everybody knows. That's totally awesome, by the way. Like
he's part of our podcast too sometimes.
Okay, Elena, what about you? Why did you start? What did you learn?
So I really found that especially with all of the headlines that we're seeing about EVs and electrification and what's going on, I just felt like there was a gap in a show where it's conversational, it's not academic, it's not I'm going to tell you about the 1.21 gigawatts that it takes to charge this vehicle. And I thought that there needed to be a different conversation, a different voice for what's happening in the electric vehicle space. So I bravely tried to fill that void, and it's been amazing. It's been so much fun. But I have to say, if I didn't have that prior experience with doing my first podcast, which was really more outside of automotive, it was not automotive focused at all, I wouldn't have been able to jump in so quickly to EVs for everyone. And to Kaylee's point about like, I can't do everything all of the time. I was like, immediately I'm getting, a firm to just outsource to go and edit for me. I was not trying to take that on by myself. You know, everyone here has other quote unquote day jobs. And it was just, I wanted it to be able to be a creative outlet for me, because that's where I really love it. And I'm sure, all of us on this call here can agree, like that element of creativity, meeting new people, especially during the pandemic. Like that's how I met new people, was through the podcast. It was like, this was a great conversation. It's cool. We should sometimes, you meet in real life. So it's been a lot of fun. And I've learned a ton of just about the electric vehicle space, which I think is fascinating and it's always growing. So, I'm just a huge super fan of podcasting. I don't think that I've personally been able to grow my personal brand without it.
Mm-hmm. There was, at the podcasting convention, there was a lot of focus on building your brand through the utilization of your podcast. And up until about then, it had always just been this really fun thing that I liked to do and I wanted to do more of. And I was getting this constant conversation back from Herb that's like, chill out. This is like a process. You need to learn how to build a brand off of this. And I'm like, let's go right now. And then I'm hearing that from other people other than the person who is trying to teach me how to podcast was constructive.
But it's good that you have that. It's good that you have that enthusiasm, though, because to what Charity D was saying, like, there are some weeks where it's like there's nothing to do, like you don't have a guest scheduled, but that's what's like the enthusiasm has to like keep your motor going.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, I'd like to add too, it's been really cool to really highlight the guest, and like some people that come on the show that don't normally speak or have the opportunity to speak their mind. I think that's like probably the most motivating and cool part, to see them shine and like put a light on them and say like, look at this awesome person, look what they're doing. I think that's what I've loved the most about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting, really cool people in the automotive space, and they're all doing so many different things. It's really rewarding having a podcast and meeting all these different people.
Oh, for sure. So I work in my whole career. I've worked in a single point market, and I started as a receptionist and then worked my way up. And so everything was just, this is my job. I go into work, I do my job, I go home. And then I started dabbling in expanding outside of that into the actual world of automotive. And it's massive. And I love it so much that now I'm hooked for sure. But I would never have learned any of that stuff if I hadn't have taken the opportunity to start investigating the podcasting world for automotive. And, you know, that was like 10 years ago. There was not very many podcasts back then, let alone automotive podcasts. And most of them were run by guys talking about classic cars.
Bingo. So I was like, more women in automotive need to have podcasts.
Yeah. Absolutely. And like now there's so many, it's like, how do you prioritize listening to them all, right? Like there's just, I have a running list all the time. I'm like, oh, there's a new one. I got to listen to that, see what they're doing. Cause it's really cool to see so many in the auto space adopting podcasting. And that's how we get our message out there, right? To show how awesome it is to work in this industry.
For sure. What do you think what are some of the areas that we're missing in podcasting in the automotive space? Herb speaks Spanish. So I'm currently there's a huge gap right there. There isn't Spanish podcasts for automotive at all. No. And so I've been investigating that one a lot. What are some of the ones that you guys have been noticing? Have you noticed any?
Well, I can think of a topic that it's difficult as an automotive podcast to get outside of automotive. I have a cow over here. But I mean, like, how do we teach people that, you know, this is a great industry to work in? How do we reach outside of automotive to those people that might consider it a career?
Well, it's like making like a career type podcast. You know, April Palmer has a live. I don't know if it's a full on podcast, but she does a live about the current, I don't know what it's called, but basically the current highlighting people that may be looking for careers or jobs. Like that might be something that we're missing, of just like talking about the career opportunities.
So she does lives where people who are looking for jobs, she like interviews them live.
I think so.
That's kind of cool.
Right, yes, it is very cool. She's awesome.
That's clever.
But I will. Yes.
Do people get jobs off of it? I mean, obviously, hopeful.
I should ask. It's called the Talent Pool. Yeah. So I don't know if she takes those recordings and puts them into a podcast form, but she does lives on LinkedIn. So
because
you won like the current auto pool of like people,
because that really is finding. It's frustrating. You hear people always and I'm one of them that say they just fell into the automotive space, and it would be really nice if people intentionally ended up in the automotive space, if our career paths were highly professional people aiming for this instead of Wall Street, but changing the narrative that we have within the sales world and the automotive dealership world, that comes first. And that's podcasting helps to do that. But then how do we propel that forward? How do we create that voice moving forward?
I think it starts with the schools, high schools, trades. I don't know who creates those, but I guess it would start with the dealership in their area, offering courses, I guess, on the different areas of the business it's a trade, right? I know, because you don't go to school to work at a dealership.
Right. And those, if you remember going to those career events in high school where, and you'd go to their booth and they'd have like a couple of flyers or something, and it would be really lackluster. I think that would be a good place to start, is being more exciting in the automotive and really show people all of the great things that we have in this community.
Yeah, and also too, I would take it in a little bit of a different direction too. I go to a ton of conferences, right? And so now for the first time, CES, which is always the Consumer Electronics Show, which is in January every year, it's now becoming the automotive show. Like CES is a huge, huge deal. So if people are like, well, probably not now, are like, oh, I want to work in tech. Maybe not at this like current juncture. People like, just because of what's happening in the tech world right now, and just the gigantic like cluster that's happening there. But I think it's notable to say, all the OEMs are represented at CES now. You've got all the really latest and greatest technology, right, which has drawn me into the automotive industry, right? And I think CES is now the new auto show, right? And I think as we move into a world where it doesn't matter the propulsion method of the vehicle, it could be hydrogen, it could be electric, it could be ICE, like doesn't matter. I think people are now starting to realize like, wow, this is such a huge, huge industry. So I thought highlighting CES, because of the fact that it's such a gigantic show that, people from all over technology are attending, automotive is front and center. I think that makes a statement.
Right. And it pulls those, you're right. It pulls those careers in, and the way that cars are being built now, any automotive is being built, and the technology that is going into them. I mean, where else do you see that kind of stuff?
For sure. And I think it's a huge attractor, right? A way to say like, there's this really cool photo that I always like to reference. There's a photo of Fifth Avenue in New York City, I think right before Henry Ford came out with the Model T. And it's just all like horse and buggy, just horses. And then the Fifth Avenue, it was like a year later, it's just like all Model Ts, right? So then the idea is, okay, well, you're to wake up the next morning. EV adoption, yes, it's going to take a while, right? Everybody has their own opinion on EV. I've talked to a lot of people about this, and I think we're going to wake up and it's like, oh, wow, okay, it's not just in the gas station. Like, how can I be a part of this quote unquote disruptor? So I said probably a lot of triggering things for people just then, because people have, but the one thing is that people have very strong opinions about electrification. Like that's, I mean, for me personally, that's what keeps the show very interesting.
I bet. When you were talking about that, it just made me go back to, I don't know if anyone watches 1923. It's like the Yellowstone, all those spinoffs. And in the show, it's like they kind of show that where the cowboys are riding the horses, and then they're adopting like the what do they call them? Did they call them cars back then? I don't know, buggies.
They're like, yeah, the buggies.
Yeah, but in the show, it's like talking about how they're like electricity in a house, or this washing machine will wash your clothes, and it's like they show the people like being reluctant to it, like that's not, why would we do that? It's the same thing that's going on. It's just
Yeah. It's so fascinating, and that's where, going back to the original, I took us down a rabbit hole. I'm sorry.
Yes,
but
you totally did.
I think going back to your other question, Charity, about like what's the gap, like what's missing in automotive, like people need to see just all of the technology and all of the opportunity, because there's a ton of opportunity in automotive.
Oh, I've worked for dealerships that have entire IT departments that are focused on building programs and building software. And that's incredible. And not the kind of area that somebody who's in college is going to think, I want to go into the automotive space and build software for them. But anybody on the vendor side knows that the automotive space is incredibly lucrative, and dealerships are more than happy to try something new out, and you're right. That's a really good area to look at. And recruiting out of that area is probably a great space too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And people that work hard can make so much money in automotive without having, college career or years and years of experience. Just working hard will get you so far in automotive.
Right. But then imagine if you took the work ethic and you added that level of education and professionalism that comes out of higher education. Where could we be? Well, I was talking to a friend the other day about ethics in the automotive space and in ethics and sales. And he had said, well, everybody walks the gray area all the time. And that's not just in automotive sales. Like if he used to do the door-to-door, pest or solar or whatever. And he says, it's always a gray area and you have to choose which line. And I said, well, imagine what sales would be like if nobody had to choose which side of the gray line to be on and everybody just was ethical. What would we all be doing? Like it would completely shift the industry in such a positive manner. And we should definitely be focusing on that trajectory. And that needs to be the conversation that we have whenever we're talking on podcasts, in my very humble opinion.
Ethics is a big deal.
Yeah. I think so. And there's a lot of language around, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with, as you're scrolling your LinkedIn feed, you see all the messages of transparency. And we have this new X, Y, and Z widget that's going to give you transparency. Mm-hmm. And because you're right, Charity, like it's this almost like this shadow or this misconception, I think, really to get over that stereotype of just, well, automotive is sleazy, mm-hmm. right? But there are really good, like everyone that I've met in automotive, like present company included, are lovely people, mm-hmm. like genuinely lovely, authentic, will help you out if you are in a pinch, lovely people. So it's like, it's this weird contradiction in my brain where I'm always having to go like, yeah, maybe the public perception is this way. And, obviously we have some work to do in automotive, but I just keep going back to the fact that like I met my husband because of automotive, and it's the most wonderful people work in this industry.
Mm-hmm. Well, and because a lot of people, the flip side of that is when you stumble into the industry because of need and desperation, a lot of times, I think that breeds a certain amount of understanding for the human experience and the second chance. And a lot of people in the automotive industry are incredibly motivated to give back and incredibly motivated to give a second chance. And that's really important aspect of the industry as well. I think that sometimes that gets people in trouble because they give too many second chances. But yeah.
That makes sense. Well, and there's years and years of the, if we want to call it sleazy automotive, where that's just the perception, and, the older generation is teaching the kids, the younger generation, what they went through. And it's, domino, it's going down where it's not quite like that anymore. And, isn't that what we learned? We learned from our elders and their experience was the sleazy, auto business.
Right. No, I totally agree.
Yeah.
But I also think, though, too, like, just to pull like some current events into the conversation a little bit, like when we see kind of what is happening or what was happening like a couple months ago with Carvana and Vroom and companies like that, it's like, yeah, you can't really, for the longest time, dealers on the retail side are saying, well, it'll never work. It'll never work. And see, look, it didn't work. Mm-hmm. But then when you take a step back, you can also say, yeah, but they've changed the customer expectation and the customer experience forever, right? Because now people you're seeing like that whole omni-channel experience of where you're starting your customer journey. Yeah. So folks are now saying, yeah, wow, okay, I expect this part of the process to happen online. I expect this part of the process where, okay, maybe I'm going to have to go see a person. But I think like folks in the industry were like a little bit too like eager to jump in, but like, see, it didn't work out and like, see what happened. But I really do. I mean, just from my own personal experience, I did sell a car at the height of the bubble, which was amazing. And then I had a really good experience just like selling this vehicle to Carvana. Like, I don't even want to tell you the check that they cut me for my 2014 Ford Focus, but like that experience was amazing. Right. So now I think the more an entrance light, and call them disruptors, call them whatever you want, I think that also attracts talent. That attracts, folks that want to be in mobility, want to be in transportation vehicles, right? And I think it's just we're just in such a really interesting time right now.
Definitely.
And that's why I love all the different, opinions that are coming at us. And like I said, headlines, it's fascinating.
So there was go ahead.
One thought before you go on. There's definitely the idea that there's room for technology and growth in automotive, but it doesn't seem like anyone has quite figured out that puzzle piece yet. Mm-hmm. But seeing what happened to Carvana, we can see that there's a need there, but it's not quite filled yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's because the Carvanas of the world were not dealers. Like, dealers are not going to go away, but the process of what they were trying to do is what the consumer wants. I think most people want that. And so I think if dealers were to adopt more of that style, it would work. So instead of focusing on the fact that it didn't work, figure out how we can make it work. Because dealers are a lot more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that I personally think that consumers want a personal experience. And that's not going to go away anytime soon.
No.
And that's probably one of the biggest gaps, is because Carvana wants to give a 0 personal experience and the dealership wants to give like 100% personal experience.
Also, like, kind of meeting your consumer in the middle too, right. Like figuring out like who wants more of a personal and who wants more of just completely online or whatnot. Like figuring out those different processes, and then like having an org chart, or maybe like a format to not trying to do a one size fits all kind of thing.
Right. Having processes for the different nuances of the consumer of today. I mean, when we go back to the Model Ts, there was how many options? Like 1, 2?
One.
I think there were 3, maybe
You had
2 or 3.
you had like I think for a little bit. I mean, Ford had the monopoly on it for a while, right? And then I don't know what the other models were that came into the So
Yeah, it wasn't very
didn't
many.
really have much of a choice.
Right. This is what you get.
It was your Model T or your horse,
Yeah.
your buggy.
Figure out what you want.
And then the changes were like, you could have 2 colors choices instead of 1. And obviously, as we expand on what we can and cannot put into a vehicle, we have got to expand on how we approach that with our customer base. Yeah. So one of the things that you said a minute ago, Elena, my best friend she's South African. She lives in Mexico and probably would be horrified with how much I talk about her on the podcast. She says that Americans have a really weird relationship with failure because as you were talking about Carvana and, everybody's like, well, we knew that it wasn't going to work. But what did they do? Did they fail or did they create a conversation and momentum to move us forward? Is that failure? Because I don't see that as failure.
I love the way that you frame that though, Charity, because it's like, is it conversation and momentum? Yes, absolutely. 1,000,000%. And I think to everyone's point that we've already just established, like there is a way for entrance or new entrants into the automotive ecosystem to really just challenge the status quo, right? And I think with all of this new, we've got machine learning, ChatGPT,
Let's talk about
every
that.
5 seconds. Let's talk about that. Like every 5 seconds, I feel like I'm reading about a new generative AI tool that I need to start like investigating. It's right. So it's no matter what the industry is being hit with, it's always a great way, an opportunity to open up the conversation and just say you have to move forward. Like you cannot just stay stagnant. Well, this is complacent is the word that I'm looking for. A complacent attitude of saying, well, this is how we've always done it, guys. We've always done it this way. There's no other way.
Yeah.
If for nothing else.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. It's like there's no progress.
Now more than ever, businesses need more efficient sales. That's why thousands of dealerships trust 4Eyes to help with things like automated inventory email updates and ensuring all of your leads get into the CRM. To try 4Eyes for free, visit 4eyes.io/dealertalk. That's 4eyes.io/dealertalk.
Since Kaylee's so excited.
Well, I'm so excited to talk about it.
Yeah. Why are you so excited, Kaylee?
Okay, so I'm always like when new things happen, I'm a little bit like I'm a person that's like in the middle. Like I'm never like, oh, I hate it, because I'm like, okay, I gotta learn about it. I have to hear from other people like what's working for them. And so when I first heard about it is when I went to Business Bourbon and Cigars. I was like, what is this? I haven't even heard about this. And my thought of it was like, oh my gosh, it's just going to create all this content. People are going to copy and paste and we're just going to become like stupid, basically. But once I learned more about it, it wasn't really about just putting something in there and getting content or something. It was more about kind of, I'm trying to like figure out the best words to describe it, like drilling down into like really creative. Like I feel like I'm using it to be more creative. I think because I'm a content creator and I'm working on multiple different things, and I feel like it's just allowed me to really expand, I think.
Because there are times when you're trying to create content, and if I have to say that this incredible new vehicle one more time, right? And you're like, how do I say this without saying this? I'm not
Yeah.
Shakespeare. I don't have the entire dictionary memorized. So I need more words. And ChatGPT, I can put it in there and it'll pump back something with different words. And I'm like, oh, I like
yeah.
how
I'm
you
like,
said
that's
that.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, Gina.
But then there's that fear that we're gonna, like, you know, is it gonna make us lazy because we're not like thinking? But then I'm like, no, because you take that and you're like, well, how could I make this
Mhm.
better? It's not just taking it and
Right.
pasting it in. So yeah,
Right.
that's how I feel.
I think it helps you iterate on a thought. I think we have, again, we're all content creators here, and we get into our own drudgery a little bit. So, and this is what's interesting too about the different various prompts that you can have it do. You can say, all right, well, maybe we'll say a competitive analysis that I need to do. And then you can say, all right, well, help me formulate this competitive analysis into an engaging interview with Charity, an engaging interview with Kaylee, and then like put their LinkedIn by, like, that's some crazy sophisticated
Powerful.
stuff, but it's it helps you iterate, and you know, there is a conversation happening, like the machines are coming for our jobs, like the robots are taking over, but I think it's a, if we're all kind of like responsibly making things, oh, there's the baby, we're responsible, and we're using it in a creative iterative way.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for it.
Well, it's
One of the
just
things
like,
that
oh,
go ahead.
Okay. I'm just like,
I was going to say, one of the things that I really like about it is that it can help you do research. So
Yeah.
you could say, hey, I need the top 5 ways that people struggle with creating or with titling their vehicle. And it boom, 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 boom. Where did you get that from? Well, okay, so this state does this and this state does that. And I'm like, how much time did I just save myself
That's
trying
the thing.
to find?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's making us work faster, and that's the whole thing, that we're using tools to make us better and work smarter. And it's like, because I go back to the lazy thing, because I have kids, and you know, I think there's rumors about like kids writing, you know, homework and doing, you know, not really. So there's that fear, but then it's like we're doing the same thing. They could use it for research and really, you know, expanding on the way that they're doing their homework.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Or
we
even
just restrict it from them.
I take the content that I've written and I throw it in there, and I say, will you please fix the grammar?
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys ever tried to like alter the tone of the text? You say, make it sound, but
Witty.
yes, punchy.
Witty.
So exciting.
Yes, entertaining.
Yeah. Have you
Make
tried
That
it
I think
make
it's so fun.
action oriented?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. When
Haven't
it's
tried
so
that.
funny.
What is it?
Action oriented. You'll be like, hey, take this automotive content and make it action oriented, and you're going to get revving up for.
That is so true. So I've used it so many times that I get kind of the same things over and over. And I wonder, am I just asking the same questions in different ways? And so I haven't found it very successful as making content. I find it kind of generic, even though if I make it drill down into but that's my experience with it, and it's not that much experience.
Oh, I definitely think that there's a generic aspect to it if you don't quite know how to ask the questions. And I don't know how to ask the questions.
It's the questions, and then taking that and tweaking it and then putting it back in, and it like learns your tone. Is that what you're going to say? Maybe, I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, and also I was gonna say too, there is, so aside from ChatGPT, and I don't have a sponsorship with this company at all, although I should, but there's Copy.ai. So to Charity D, what you were saying, it does a much better. It's less repetitive. It actually will help you with prompts also too along the way. But yeah, it works in the exact same way. You just open up like a new chat window and follow the prompts, but it's a little bit, I find it to be a little bit more robust. And they also list the source links in there, so you can click on it to go back and see like where did they pull this information from.
That's
So
really cool.
anyway,
What is that one called?
I should
We're all gonna write it down now.
copy.ai.
Copy.ai.
Go ahead and sponsor the show, copy.ai.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's hilarious.
And it's free. It's free. It's free. It's free.
Well,
Did
that's
you guys see Google's new AI that they've just released? They released a video on it, and it's supposed to summarize your email, like an email string. It'll summarize it for you. It'll create a quick response that you can give back. So it's Google's jumping in to compete with this, and this AI.
Okay,
my-
so my
question
criticism there is they're going to jump into AI and they haven't figured out how to organize my email better. Like, come on, focus.
Oopsie.
What's going on? So okay, it's ChatGPT and Copy.ai. They're both free. So my question is, how are they making money? Like, how are they going to make money? Or what is?
Oh, I'm sure
Well,
that they're going to come up with a subscription plan at some point.
They're taking all of the information that we're input and they're just selling it. They're just like selling all of our data. Every prompt that exactly, it's going to go through it out. Like, don't worry. Yeah.
Have you ever heard?
Don't worry, they're making money.
Yeah. Have you ever heard the thing that says don't do the quizzes online? You know, those are you what Harry Potter house are you?
Yeah.
Because that's actually tracking you and it gets all of your data and who you are so that it can better advertise to you.
Well, yeah, that's Google's whole thing. They just want to advertise to you. And like if you're looking up some sort of disease or something in healthcare, you're just going to get the same things over and over and sponsor content. Whereas I think I'm hopeful that AI will be like, they'll go into studies and stuff and be more detailed about what you're looking for, not just whatever's for sale on the internet today.
Yeah.
Right. For sure.
I think the story is still being written there. We'd like to think we can evolve past just the quick sale.
Well, I mean, what did they value at? ChatGPT valued at something stupid high.
Really?
I wonder if I can look it up.
Yeah.
Let's look it up.
Use ChatGPT to just ask it.
How much is
that's? Do you think that it'll tell you? GPT was 29 billion.
Yeah, billion. Yeah.
Billion.
Oh, okay. So I have one more question, and then I'll ask the big question. And this is actually probably a dumb EV question for you, Elena. So there was a huge rainstorm here the last couple of days, and a lot of water on the roads, and the conversation came up about EVs in water. What's the ramifications of that? I mean, obviously, the conspiracy theorist in me is like, are you going to get electrocuted? All of the cars, everybody dies.
You're gonna be like Doc Brown in Back to the Future, like all hair just like crazy, standing on ends.
I mean, obviously,
that's exactly what's gonna happen. So I am not an engineer by any means, but I interviewed the CMO of Witricity. So Witricity does wireless charging. So instead of you plugging your vehicle in, what they're doing is they're working with all the different OEMs. There's a plate underneath of the vehicle, and you basically drive over top of the wireless charging mechanism. And so what she was explaining to me, because my question was, all right, well, weather, it's going to snow, it's going to rain, there's the elements outside. How does that affect the charging? She's like, doesn't affect it at all. She was giving me all of the research, all of the technical engineering, but I will save you from that boring part of it. But the bottom line was that she's like, we work with municipalities to install these wireless chargers like on the road. They're based out of Massachusetts, but they have a really large kind of customer base in California. No surprise there. But within the municipalities, they were able to install these, like the part of the charger that is next to a planter. So it's kind of hidden, so it still looks nice. And then in the asphalt is the actual, you just drive over top of it, and that's the wireless charger. So, but for the vehicle itself, I mean, I haven't heard anything specific from any of the OEMs or automakers regarding it being unsafe. And what, I mean, of course, if you're trying to drive through a really gigantic flood, it might shut down, but I think an ICE vehicle, would do the same. So, I thought the wireless charging bit was pretty fascinating because,
like I have a ton of questions.
Are
they planning on putting those in the asphalt on roads, like highways? Because that's freaking clever.
So at the lights, when you're stopped at lights,
Yeah. And she said that what they do is you can take, she called it a power snack. I was like, ooh, power snack. I'm really good at power snacking. She's like, no, not that kind of power snack. Your vehicle would get just like a little, I was like, oh, like Doritos? No, you drive over it. Your car gets a little snack. So obviously I remembered that because I really like the phrase power snack.
Yeah. Leave it to the Americans to come up with a food reference.
Right. Right. Exactly. I latched onto that immediately. I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Man, there's just, I'd like to be in the room when they came up with that term.
There are so many different advancements that are happening with not even just the charging infrastructure. I did also speak with a utility power company. They are, Kaylee, like you were saying, like they're coming up with roads now especially for long haul vehicles, trucks, that they're now starting to do these highways that have the charging mechanism inside of the road, like which is mind-blowing. It's really, really crazy, the things that they're attempting to do.
So cool.
And attempting with billions of dollars, billions with a B.
Yeah.
Lots of money.
A lot of infrastructure needed.
Right. Which are all those really great peripheral industries that come off of the automotive that's so fascinating. I love it so much.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I just love auto because there's just so many cool things that are happening right now.
Yeah,
for sure. Okay, so we have a question that we ask everybody that comes on the episode, and it's, so I guess we'll take it one at a time, but how do you think we can improve the automotive industry in the next 5 years? Who wants to go first? Kaylee.
I'll take a shot at it.
Sure.
Okay. I think we're doing well when it comes to so many things, but where we're still struggling is with our reputation, with people that are really outside of the automotive community, and they just, they go to the dealership once in a while and they deal with the shady sales guy, and that's the reputation that we have. And I think, it's a stereotype at this point, right? And it's not always like that anymore. In fact, oftentimes it's not. We have great experiences, great people, really awesome dealerships with a lot of cool facilities. So I think getting over that old reputation, especially so we can appeal to millennials and younger, is probably what we need to focus on the most over the next few years.
Mm-hmm. Kaylee.
Okay, I'll go. Can you ask the question again, though? So it's fresh.
Can we improve the automotive industry in the next 5 years?
Okay. Yes. I'm going to add a little bit to Charity's where just the reputation, but I think where we can improve is really the customer experience. And if you look at other industries and how we're all consumers, we all get those experiences, and just getting that from the dealership world would just tie it all in, and because we already have it and we want it, So I think in the next 5 years or so, the consumer experience is where I think we need to improve. Yeah, on both fixed and sales, not just being able to buy a car online, but how we service our vehicles, how we're communicated with, making that process a whole lot easier and educating the consumer. So,
Elena?
Yeah, I'm gonna +1 to you, Kaylee, for CX, because that's what I do at Teleperformance is CX all day long. Yep. So I'm like, yes, CX and education. But I also think collaboration, or the spirit of collaboration, breaking down some of the silos that exist in all of our organizations, right? I mean, it doesn't matter if you're, like we had talked about, like you're working at a dealership, you're working at a vendor, you're working at an OEM. There are so many silos and gatekeepers that exist. It's like, I think the spirit of collaboration, the spirit of learning from each other, is I think is how we're all going to get better. And I don't think anything can really exist in a bubble, because that's how innovation dies. And that's how I don't, especially where we're heading in the electrification space and in these different propulsion methods, nobody can operate in a bubble. I think collaboration is going to be key.
Yeah. Love those. Well, thank you, everybody. That's it to our listeners. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, we'll talk later.
We only host a well-respected. The vendor LexisNexis. We don't sell digital marketing. What you do? We inspect it with our DT vendor management.
Now more than ever, businesses need more efficient sales. That's why thousands of dealerships trust 4Eyes to help with things like automated inventory email updates and ensuring all of your leads get into the CRM. To try 4Eyes for free, visit 4eyes.io/dealertalk. That's 4eyes.io/dealertalk.